Well, welcome everyone. My name is Rick Roller, and I'll be your game show host tonight. We're going to be talking about anything you want to talk about, but we do have some test questions we're going to go through and some concepts that I would like to make very clear to you. Hello, Larry. Welcome. And so we're going to get started on that tonight. You can also see on your screen we have with us Dan Naylor, and Dan is the producer and the of this particular event tonight. And also he is the owner of the Institute of Real Estate Education. And we're thrilled that he could be here tonight, and he's going to chime in on some of the issues as well. But I'm a real estate instructor and have been since about 1980 is when I first started teaching these real estate pre-licensing classes in Colorado, where I was licensed. I'm still licensed in Colorado. I'm also licensed here in Utah and have an application to the state of Idaho as well. But first started in the real estate business about 1979, 78, 79, right in there. It's a little over 40 years. It's been a fantastic, fabulous ride. I commend you on having the desire and the chutzpah to sign up for real estate school and to learn all these great, fabulous terms and throw yourself into this and get licensed and get into business. This business can actually change your life. It can be, you can bless a lot of lives and make some money for yourself. And that's kind of my mantra: bless lives, make money. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on some of these exam questions. Dan, did you have a comment?
No, I'm just setting things up.
Okay. Let's do our first question then. When you take the real estate exam, I want you to understand that you're going to be taking a multiple choice exam. Now, multiple choice exams are really a good way to go for you guys because you don't have to know the right answer. You just have to pick it out of a lineup of 4. It's more of a recognition exam. And one of the things that you really have to know are all the terms and the concepts. And so we were going to go through some questions tonight, and let's start right off with this one. If a real estate purchase contract is signed by both parties, but the buyer finds that the contract does not accurately represent the property, for instance, there may have been a mistake on the legal description or something like that, the contract is what? Is it executed? Well, that's not what they're going for here. Executed means it's signed by the parties. Automatically voided. Nothing happens automatically, folks. You've got to push it one way or another. Unilateral means promise only one way. Bilateral is promise both ways. This is a bilateral contract. A buyer's promising to buy and a seller's promising to sell. But there's a problem with this contract. The contract does not accurately represent the property. So the answer to this one, folks, is on the bottom here. It's D. It's voidable by the harmed party. Now, the harmed party, obviously the seller knows what he's got. He may even be living there. But the buyer wants to buy a property, but the contract does not accurately represent the property. So the contract is voidable by the party that would be harmed, and that in this case would be the buyer. Okay, next question, please. If at any time, if you want to enable your microphone, you're welcome to ask a question at any time, and we'll handle those as they come up. So just chime in, and we'll get them taken care of. If a lessor and lessee, now lessor and lessees, obviously it's in regards to a lease. A lessor is the landlord, and a lessee is the tenant. A lessor, I mean, when you rent a property from someone, what do you want? You want possession. You want the right to live there, to move in. You want the keys. Well, who can give you the keys? See, the ORs are the giveors. So lessee are the receivers. The lessee receives the key from the landlord. You can't just move into an apartment and then one day the landlord drops by and you say, "Who are you?" I saw it was vacant. I moved in, so I just thought that would be okay. No, that's not what you should do. But in this case, the lessor and lessee come to terms on a lease for an apartment. But after the agreement is signed, it's revealed that the lessee, that's the tenant, right, is only 16 years old. Well, what the heck? What's that all mean? What's true here? Well, the correct answer is A, the lessee can void the contract. Now, why? Because he lacked one of the essential elements that you need in order to enter into a contract.
Correct.
Yeah, which is what? You have to be of age, right? You have to be 18 or older, and he's only 16. The lessor can void the contract. Well, when you have a situation like this where the lessor had capacity, but the tenant, the lessee, did not have capacity, then the lessor is bound, but the lessee is not. Now, the lessee should not have entered into a contract, but he did, and the lessor agreed to it. The lessor had capacity, the lessee did not. But what if the lessee is one of these, computer genius kids, and he has a YouTube channel and he's making $30,000 a month and he wants his own place. All right, well, and it may even be a studio for his operation or something. The harm party, which the one that did lack capacity, could get out of the deal, but the landlord can't come back to the minor and say, well, I found out you're a minor, so I'm canceling the deal. No, lessor cannot void the contract. Only the lessee can. The contract is automatically voided, and like I said, nothing happens automatically, pretty much. Or D, the contract is activated. Well, that sounds good, but doesn't mean anything. So obviously the correct answer to this one is A, the lessee can void the contract. In other words, this contract, excuse me, in other words, when this contract was entered into, it was a voidable contract from the beginning. But the one that can void it is whom? The party that lacked, in this case, the capacity. Okay, next question, please. 3 things a valid contract for land requires are 3 things that required for a valid contract. Well, is it a broker? Do you have to have a broker, or can just a for sale by owner enter into a contract for a buyer that's not being represented by an agent? Well, sure. So you don't really need a broker. B, consideration, offer acceptance, and competent parties. Ooh, that one feels warm and fuzzy. Let's kind of hang on to that one. Competent party, tax provisions, and consideration. Do we have to have tax provisions? No. And D, a legal description of the land, a broker, there's that broker again, and competent parties. So out of these in this lineup of 4, if you're guessing B because it was warm and fuzzy, you're absolutely right. That is the correct answer. There are essential elements of a contract, and these are 3 of them. Yes, question? Nope. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one, please. Now, a statute of frauds. A statute of frauds is one of these uniform contracts. A lot of real estate is sold across state lines. I mean, people from California come and buy Utah real estate. They buy it for investment, or maybe they want to move here someday and retire. A lot of people that own property in Utah are not Utah residents. And because of that, there are a number of statutes that cross state lines, and they're called uniform statutes. They're pretty much the same in all the various states. Well, the statute of frauds is one of these uniform statutes. So it's pretty much the same in California, pretty much the same in Utah and Idaho. Some states have some minor differences, but in order to facilitate interstate commerce, we have these uniform statutes. So according to the statute of frauds, a real estate sale contract must it be encumbered? Encumbered means that there's some liens against it, right? Can you have a property that's free and clear and enter into a contract to buy or sell it? Sure. Chattel means personal property. A lien, well, that's, it's a real estate term, but it has nothing to do with the contracting a property for sale. The answer to this one is D, must be signed by both parties. Now, what I'm trying to show you and teach you is that when you take the exam, a lot of times what happens is that you can find 1 or 2 answers that are obviously throwaways. And if you could just eliminate 2, now you have a 50-50 chance of getting through that test. To pass the exam, you're going to have two sections, national and state. You must pass each one separately with a good solid 70% C minus, okay? So if you can better your chances on a question, even though you're not positively sure, but you're pretty sure, you're probably going to be okay. Okay. I mean, and come to these classes and pay attention to the material and our excellent curriculum that Dan has put together, and you're going to be fine. We have an extremely high pass rate at our school, which we're very, very proud of. And so don't mess it up. Okay. Next question, please. Who must sign an agreement to sell a property? Okay, well, let me see. All the owners, the owner with the largest share. Yeah, I'm the majority owner, so I can sell it. The owner's agent. I guess if you had given someone a power of attorney, the owner's heirs. I don't know.
Okay.
They don't, that doesn't say the owner's dead yet. You could still have heirs, but you are my heir, but I'm, well, obviously,
A should be the
this
answer.
one is A. A is correct. The owners of the property. Yeah. All owners must sign it. Well, what if there's a lot of owners? Well, you've got to talk to a lot of people. I recently put one of my commercial listings under contract. It's a Village Inn up in the Ogden area, and there are 9 owners. How many signatures did I have to get on the listing contract?
9.
9. How many owners had to sign the contract, the purchase contract?
9.
9. How many owners have to sign the deed?
9.
9. It's like herding cats. That's
So
okay. It's
I
like
have a
herding.
quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So so you're saying if there are 2 owners of the property, let's say one is just on the title, but the other one is the primary, like they have the loan only under their name, can that owner that has the primary loan
Okay. That's
sell
an
out from under?
that's an excellent question, but let's kind of cover that in steps, okay?
Okay,
Lenders are not fond of lending money to people who aren't on the title to the property. One way that might happen is if you had someone co-sign for you, but even today, lenders just don't like to do that. So as a practical note, what will happen is if it's a couple, a young couple, it's buying a property, and the lender says, well, I'll make you a loan, but you're a little edgy on your credit. Do you have anyone that would co-sign for you? Oh yeah, my mom will. She has fantastic credit and a great job. Well, mom comes in and co-signs. Guess what? They're going to put mom on the title as well. The lenders
Okay.
just don't want any issues there at all if they have to foreclose. So, the answer to your question is you wouldn't be an owner unless you were vested in title. Well, but there's more than one owner. Well, what do you mean? Like they gave you money to buy the property or something? If they're not on the title, if they're not vested or in the public record as being owner on that title, then they're not an owner. So like in the commercial property, there were 9 owners. Well, all 9 had to sign, okay? If there were 3 owners, then 3 would have to sign. If there's 2 owners, 2 would have to sign. And it doesn't matter how you took title. One of your owners might be a non-breather. One of your owners might be an entity like a corporation or a limited liability company. And then there's 2 flesh and bones individual that also own with that entity owner. It doesn't matter if they're a breather or a non-breather. If they're vested in the title, then they're going to be an owner. Did that answer your question?
Kind of. It's kind of a scenario. I'll just go over it really fast because I know you have to move on. But it's where a friend of mine needs to list her house, and her spouse or former spouse, soon to be, wants to. She doesn't want to list it for a couple months, but he wants it done now, and he wants to just do it out from under her. Is that a possibility where they're both on the title?
Okay. Well, now see.
Oh, that gets kind of weird.
Yeah,
Anyway.
here's my advice to you on this type of stuff. Okay. When you try to apply practical situations to the real estate test, you're going to have trouble. Okay. Well, I know of a situation once where they were getting divorced, and then there was a remarriage, and then there was this and that and the other thing. the problem is when you find out about these stories, if it's your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever, your brother is telling you all this stuff, you don't have copies of all the contracts and you don't have copies of the title report. You really don't know what the depth of their understanding is and what their real situation is unless you look at all the legal documents. So what I'm saying is, if even though there's a divorce that's looming and it hasn't happened yet, uh, if they're both vested in title, they're both owners. And so could he sell his half to someone? Yeah, if you could find someone who wanted to buy half a house. I mean, it's kind of weird, and I don't think it's going to happen. But he can't sell the whole thing because he's only a half owner. But he could sell half. He could encumber half. It could be a problem. But the other thing is, on a practical note, is if there is a divorce looming, you shouldn't be selling the house at all until the divorce is either final or you've got some sort of definitive authorization and a decree from the divorce court. It's
That's
just,
what I'm thinking, and that's the
Yeah.
advice I was
yeah.
given.
Could you go ahead and have them both sign a listing if you're an agent, and divorce isn't final yet, and go ahead and move in that direction? Sure. Yeah, even though they're getting divorced, their marriage situation doesn't affect the title of the property, except for the fact that they're in a court of law, that there's going to be some sort of property division, and that could complicate it. Or it may not. I don't know.
Thank you.
But for the real estate exam, you're not going to see a couple that are getting married and one wants to list the house and the other doesn't. Okay. It's not going to be that devious. Okay. But if there's three owners, all three have to sign. And if someone co-signed for you on the title, I find this all the time when I'm working with homes that were first-time buyers. And they said, well, my dad co-signed, but he's not on the title. Yeah. And then I go pull the title report and yep, dad's right there in the title report.
That's right there.
Yeah, he's right there. Because the bank they don't want people obligated on the loan that aren't vested in title. That's just their policy. Is it the law? No, it's just their lender's policy. It just makes sense to them. They want a commitment that they have a commitment to the house as well.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things on a practical note, as long as we're on this topic, is when you are listing properties as an agent, you're out there, and this is your first listing, you're all excited. You need to get a title report on the property. It's called a title commitment. And talk around to other agents in the office or talk to your broker. They'll have their favorite title company and just order it from them. And when you get that title commitment, sit down with the senior agent or your broker or whoever, sales manager, and kind of go through that commitment. You can even go through it with the title company rep if you want to. But he'll show you who's vested in title and whatnot. And that's where you're going to find out, well, wait a minute, there's another owner here. Well, you need to get their signature on that listing as well. Now, what I try to do, if his dad is on that title, and he probably didn't want to be, because that also subjects him to liability if there's a slip and fall or some other, lawsuit concerning that property. So I try to get him off right away. So if I listed it and dad's on the title and he doesn't, I'd say, well, does he really want to be? And he said, oh no, he didn't even know he was on there. Well, then let's get a quit claim deed and let's take him off now.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't want a third party. The couple says, we want to sell our house and, we want to buy an RV and tour the world. And, we don't want to be tied down to a house anymore. And dad says, I don't want you to do that. That's crazy. Well, I mean, I don't want to spend all this time and effort marketing your property and not be able to get that third wheel not to sign. So
Yeah.
I try to get rid of them as quick as I can, but that's practical. It's not the test. Let's go to the next question, please.
Thank you, by the way.
Speaking of marriage. Okay, A and B are married and they're selling their vacation home they purchased together. They have signed a purchase agreement and it's time to close on the property. Well, who needs to sign the deed? Well, do you think the broker could sign for them? Here's a hint. No. Let me see. If I sign this, I get a commission. If I don't sign it, I don't get a commission. I think I'll sign this. Yeah. That's kind of a conflict of interest. Title agent will sign all documents at closing. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a throwaway. A and B both must sign the deed. What do you think, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of warm and
Yeah.
fuzzy. Either A or B.
C,
can sign
C
the-
should be.
You know, guys, it's just like signing the listing. If they both had to sign the listing, don't you think they both have to sign the transferring document to the new sellers? I mean, the new owners?
I would think so.
Well, of course they do. Very good. See, you know more than you think. You're going to be fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question, please. Okay, D&E are tenants in common, which means that's how they're vested in title. There's just different ways you can own property in Utah. You can own it all alone, which we call ownership in severity. You know, so sounds like several, but there's just, that means you're cut away from everyone else. Okay. Or you could own it as a tenant in common, or you could own it as joint tenants with full right survivorship, or there's a fourth way called tenants by the entirety. So there's 4 ways you can own property in Utah. But these guys are tenants in common. Okay. But they both rarely spend time in the property anymore as their lives have changed over the years. And D wants an agent to list their property. So who do you think you need to get that listing agreement signed? It's kind of a common theme over the last couple of questions here. Who has to sign the
Both
listing?
D&E.
Yeah, everybody has to sign the listing, right?
D. Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And these little moments in time where we emphasize this test concept, there's a reason for it. You're going to see it on the exam. Okay. So if there's 4 owners, how many signatures do you need?
4 signatures.
4. And they have to sign your listing, and they have to sign the purchase agreement, and they have to sign the deed and closing documents as well. And it's easy today because, you know, we have all this electronic signature stuff. They don't even have to be in state. They could be somewhere else. Next question, please. The contract for sale of the property is not valid unless it has both what? Well, to be valid, there must be an offer and acceptance. There must be a legitimate offer that is tendered, and then it has to be accepted. Now, wait a minute. Both the listing and the selling agent have to sign? Yeah, that make it easy too, huh? Title and deed. Well, title and deed, it sounds good, but that's that we're talking about the contract. You know, where they entered into a contract to do that, and that's we're not talking about the closing. Okay. And buyer and broker, no, that's a giveaway. All right, next. Any questions? Next question, please. A real estate sales go ahead. Nope. Okay. A real estate contract has been signed by both the buyer and the seller, but has not reached closing yet. Well, it's a unilateral is a promise one way. Is this a unilateral contract? Well, wait, there's a buyer and seller. That's 2 people. That's promises both ways. So that's a bilevel or bilateral contract. Yeah, on a bi-level house. But anyway, it's a bilateral contract, okay, not a unilateral. Is it executed? And executed, this is kind of good, but it's not the answer. Excuse me, they're looking for. Is it fraudulent? Well, I hope not. Just because it's signed by a buyer and seller doesn't make it fraudulent. What it is an express contract, which means it has not been closed yet. Now, another word for express is executory. It's an executory contract. So when something goes under contract, we call it under contract because the buyer and seller have agreed. That doesn't mean you're going to run right down to the title company that same day. So the answer to this is D. But that doesn't mean you're going to go down to the title company. You know, they sign up at 3. You meet everyone down there at 4 o'clock and you sign all the documents and it closes. No, you've got some hoops to jump through. You've got, title work that has to be done. You have documents that have to be prepared. Most buyers get a loan. There has to be loans all put together and all this kind of thing. And so it takes a little while. It can close fast. In many cases, real fast, 3, 4, 5 days, particularly if someone's paying cash. But if it's not, if you're not paying cash, that buyer has to get a loan. He has to get an appraisal. He has to get approvals. It has to be underwritten. Then it takes a little while to close. When it closes, then it's a B, executed contract. Where that you put it up against the wall and you shot it, so it was executed. But that it's done. But you enter this, what we call the executory stage, where it becomes an express contract as we all work to get it closed. One of the big misconceptions about real estate that a lot of property owners have is that, well, I found my buyer, so I guess I really don't need the realtor anymore. Now that's when the realtor really starts going to work. I mean, you've got to make sure the title clears. You're the orchestrator. You're the conductor of this symphony that you're doing, and there's just a whole lot of hoops that have to be jumped through. And you're the only one that is high enough up in this transaction. You see everything that needs to be done. We really go to work once they go under contract, and finding a buyer in this market's not hard at all. Okay, so the next one, please. Okay, a contract that is binding on both parties is both parties. That's kind of plural. It is what? Uni or bi? Is it a unilateral or bilateral contract, guys? It's bilateral. It's the correct answer is C, right? Sure. It's not executed yet. It could be binding on both parties, but it's a bilateral contract. Is it illegal? No. Hopefully not. It shouldn't be illegal. That's why you have a license, and we're doing something that's legal. I mean, buying drugs is not legal. Okay, next one, please. A mortgage instrument is executed by who? Who signs the loan document? The owner's agent, the lending institution, the owner's heir. How about the owner? Yeah, really hard to borrow property, put a loan and hypothecate a property. When you put a property up as collateral on loans, it's called hypothecation. It's really hard to hypothecate a property when you're not the owner. You need to be the owner. So that's who the bank wants to sign that document. And all the owners, right? Yeah, sure, of course. You're putting a lien against that property. Okay, next one, please. And that is a contract can be rescinded, meaning, what does that mean?
Taken back.
Yeah, canceled, taken back, right? If the buyer backs out, the seller feels the price is too low, both parties agree, or the parties are married. Being married or not married, I don't think it has anything to do with anything. But the buyer backs out. Well, but okay, the buyer wants out of the deal, but the seller has to agree to it. So what do you think, guys? It's got to be what?
C.
Yeah, this is a mutual rescission. Now, if it's canceled, if there is a contingency in the contract where the buyer or the seller could cancel, if it was written in that this contract is valid unless this happens or that happens, or I do an inspection and I like everything. If I don't like it, I can get out of the deal. That is but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about any contract can be rescinded. Well, no, not unless there's a provision that lets it be rescinded by one party, or unless both parties mutually rescind the contract. Okay. Okay, an agency relationship that is not in writing and is created unintentionally through the actions of the parties. Well, it's not dual, it's not proper, it's implied. Okay, universal agent is something that does everything for someone. If you lack capacity, if you're in a coma, or you're adjudicated incompetent, like you're the Rain Man, and you don't, you're really good at cards, but you can't, you have no rational thought, or you lose your mind in some way, you become mentally incompetent, then you're going to have someone put in charge of your affairs, and they'll be usually a trustee. And that would be like a universal agent, because they could handle all your affairs. Now, when you list a property, you're not a universal agent. You don't handle their banking. You don't handle, where they get their car repaired or not, or anything like that. We're a special agent licensed to sell. Okay, you're a special agent, and you're hired to find a buyer for that property. Implied agency is the correct answer here, because it was unintentional through the actions of the parties, and you didn't have a written agreement. you can't really work with implied agency in Utah. I mean, you could be sued for it, but in Utah, it's a license violation not to have a written agreement. You must always have a written agreement, either on the buyer side or the seller side. It's required. Okay, let's talk about, in order to create agency, an agreement to represent someone to sell their home, you must have a college degree. That'd be nice, but I don't think it's necessary, right? A letter of recommendation, well, that'd be nice, but not essential either. A deed to the property, well, I don't know, that would make you an owner, not necessarily someone who wants to sell their home. So you need a real estate license, okay? Now, there are some people that are exempt from needing a license. If you're out of town and you want your brother-in-law to go sign on the closing for you, you could give them a power of attorney so they could sign documents for you. If you are in the military and you're a vested owner in the property, they when they're shipped out overseas, they have signed a power of attorney so that some of their affairs can be handled here without interrupting their service to their country. But these other things, a college degree, a letter of recommendations, obviously those are just phony answers. Okay, the next one, please. Oh, and a lawyer can do certain things, but you can't, if you're a lawyer can have some very narrow things that they can do for a client. I mean, they have more education than we do. But if you're listing properties and putting them up for sale and holding open houses and putting for sale signs on them, and then you need a real estate license. And they make it real easy for lawyers to get a real estate license. They don't have to do any of the schooling, but they have 3 years of legal work, so legal schooling, so they don't really need it. But they do have to take the test and pass it. Next one, please. Okay, which of the following is a material fact? A material fact is something that would affect the value of the home and possibly a buying decision. The seller's willing to sell for 20 grand below the listing price. That's not really a material fact. That's, yeah, they're motivated to sell, but that's not a material fact. Land is rumored to be haunted. That's a stigmatized property, and we have a state law that says that can't be a material fact. The house has an unconventional floor plan. Well, that's something in the house. The seller is under financial pressure. That's too much like A. If A is wrong, then D's got to be wrong too. So it's rumored to be haunted, or it has an unconventional floor plan. Unconventional floor plans are kind of like white elephant properties. It's something in the house itself. And is that a material fact? Yeah. I mean, what would that be? Well, a lot of older homes were built back in the 20s and the 1919s and 1909 with train bedrooms. In other words, you had to walk through this bedroom to get into that bedroom, and so if all the bedrooms in the house are, that back bedroom, there's no way you can get into it unless you walk through the other bedroom to get into that bedroom. Well, that's not real. It's definitely going to affect the value of a home. So that would be a material fact. Well, I said it had 2 bedrooms. I didn't tell you the whole story, Okay, next one, please. Okay, if a seller hired an agent, Jack is the agent that the seller hired, okay? Let me see, Jack is the seller. Okay, Jack is the seller. I gotta get my people straight, that hired the agent. K is a customer who's buying the seller's house. L is a mortgage broker financing the property. M is a title agent that will close the property. And we're not talking about the home inspector. We're not talking about the home warranty guys. There's other people involved here, but just these are involved. To whom does the agent owe his full list of fiduciary duties? And that would be J, which is the seller. You don't have a fiduciary duty, the mortgage broker. I mean, you really don't have much of a relationship with the mortgage broker at all, except maybe they're your favorite mortgage broker and they do a lot of loans for you. But that's really between the buyer and that mortgage agent. It's not you. And then K is a customer. Well, you might be representing them, you might not. But what we're saying here is who hired the agent. Well, it wasn't the customer, it was the seller. If the buyer were being represented by the agent as well, they wouldn't be a customer, they'd be a client. Okay, as far as the exam goes. Next question, please. Who's held liable to provide material facts to potential buyers? Well, guys, obviously the owner is, but what about you? If the owner said, hey, don't tell him the roof's leaking, What do you think?
We're liable.
No, you can't do that. You're liable. So it's the owner and the agent both. If the agent knows, or if the agent should have known, and because you didn't use reasonable care in putting it on putting the house on the market, then you could be liable for not revealing material facts. Okay. We do have a fiduciary duty of confidentiality, but that duty of confidentiality does not extend to material facts. If there's something that the buyer needs to know, you need to tell them. If there's something that they hid in the house and tried to cover it up, you wouldn't see that big crack in the foundation. And it's there, or it was there. You have to disclose that. Okay, next question, please. Okay. We got this one. It's the owner and the agent both, right? In the next one, if there is no written agency agreement, which is called a listing agreement, a licensee could create dual agency by, dual agency is when you're representing both. Wow, hiccups. Say something shocking. Okay, so it's a written agreement created. No, there is no written agreement, and we're creating dual agency. How are we going to get there? A hearing, a hearing with the commission, man? I hope not. A company policy? What's it have to do with anything? Establishing a relationship with both the buyer and the seller. Okay, if you're talking to the seller and you're saying, "Oh, I love representing you, and I'm going to get you the very best deal," and you're saying the same things to the buyer, they're going to think that that's dual agency, or what we also call limited agency. So you have to be very careful in what you say, and we're very careful to not only disclose agency to all the parties in an agreement, but to confirm that as well. And we do that in our real estate purchase contract. There's a paragraph in there where we detail who the agents are and who their broker is and what the companies are and whom they are representing. It's really important stuff. Next question, please. A potential buyer comes to an open house, meets the seller's agent. When should you tell them that you are working for the seller? Now, when you haven't been in real estate and you haven't been through the real estate course and taken an exam and got licensed, this might seem a little strange to you. Because if you were walking to Nordstrom's, okay, and there's a sales clerk there, and they are so nice, and they're very nice to you, and they help you, and you try on a lot of different clothes and things, and they say, "Oh, this would look good with you, and this would look good with that," and but they have this name badge on it. It says Nordstrom's. Are they working for you, or are they working for Nordstrom's?
Nordstrom's.
They're working for Nordstrom's. So here's a couple are coming to your open house. They had to walk by all the balloons and your open house sign that had your name on it in front of the house. But the state law says you don't want them getting confused, because you're going to be really nice to them too. But at this point, you're representing the seller. So you should tell them, immediately on that first meeting that you're representing the seller. Okay. Because you don't want them in misunderstanding. Now, could that change? Could you possibly enter into a relationship with them as well and go to limited agency? Yes. But that's not what this question says. It didn't say they wanted to do that. Now, could you establish an agency relationship with the buyer? Yeah, maybe. You wait till closing to disclose. Well, that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. Keep the agency agreement private. That's going to get you in a lot of trouble. You knew D was the throwaway. So, you had your choice of 3 there. The only other one that was kind of good was B. But there was nothing in this question. You can't assume things. There's nothing in this question that would indicate that the buyer wanted you to represent them as well. Okay. So next question, please. Immediately after the purchase agreement is signed, the buyer obtains something. They get something. When that seller agrees to sell the home to the buyer, they don't get a quitclaim deed. That's giving them ownership interest. They don't get controlling interest. I don't even know what the heck they're talking about there. They get this C. They get equitable title. occupation rights. I mean, I agreed to sell you my home, but I didn't tell you you could move in. You haven't bought it yet. Okay. So after they sign the agreement, the buyer has obtained the right to buy the home. And that's governed by the agreement. And there's deadlines in there and all kinds of things that govern as we enter this executory stage. But during the executory stage, they get equitable title. In other words, can the seller sell it to someone else without dealing with that first buyer? Nope. He could get a backup contract, but that first buyer has some rights, and that right is called equitable title. Doesn't give them the right to move in. Doesn't give them the right to come and look at it 16 times and, interrupt the seller's life a lot, although some people will agree to that, but only if they agree to it. Next question, please. In submits an offer to buy O's property, and O submits a counteroffer to in. Now, when there's an offer made, if the seller decides to accept it, they could sign it, and that becomes a binding contract between the parties once that acceptance is communicated back to the other party or the other party's agent. And that's a real critical period there. You're hoping they accept your offer, and they do. Well, that's really cool. Okay. But the seller didn't accept it. They said, I won't do that, but I will do this. And so they're counteroffering. When you counteroffer, and then the buyer says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go find something else. And then the seller yells, oh, King's X, I'll go ahead and take your first offer. Okay. When a counteroffer is given to the buyer from the seller, it cancels the first offer. That offer, nope, won't do that. Cancel the offer. But here's what I will do. Here's a counteroffer. And the buyer has a right to either accept it or not. But that first offer is canceled. It's not executory, it's not executed, and it's not outstanding. It's canceled. Okay. So you want people to counter. That's good. It keeps the deal alive. But I tell my sellers now, if we counter, that's great. They will accept this, but they probably will accept a counter or look at it, but they don't have to. They can just completely walk away. We could lose them. But this is a hyper sellers market we're in now, and people don't even worry about that kind of stuff, because usually we're getting 2 and 3 offers on properties within just the first few days. I mean, it's crazy. Even on little commercial buildings, I put up another little commercial building at like $450. We got a full price offer within 4 days. I mean, it's just, but housing's even worse. We're getting multiple offers. I mean, there's not a lot. We don't have enough for sale right now. Yes, sir. Question?
A little story. I had a deal recently where you get multiple offers. So we had this home that was for sale. We got, 10 offers the first day.
10?
We went back and forth, and there was one we really wanted, and we actually accepted it, but it ended up backing out a day later. But that was okay, because they put in $2,000 earnest money non-refundable, which meant that the seller got $2,000 just for taking the home off the market for one day. So that was wonderful. But the point I was getting to is, so then, since they canceled, we wanted to go back to some of these other offers we'd received and, maybe go with one of those, but they had all expired. All of their acceptance deadlines had passed. So we found one that we liked. We called them and said, hey, are you still interested? Do you still want the property? And they said, yes, but we don't have a deal yet. We verbally agreed, but the other offers expired. So the only way to put a new offer in is we had to send them a counter offer, or they would have had to send us another offer with new deadlines. And so we sent them a counter offer, and it was kind of, there was drama because they did some negotiation, and then they didn't accept our counter offer. And so, but they thought we were under contract, but they had never accepted our counter offer. I think they somehow thought we had accepted the previous offer, even though it was expired. So the point I was making—
Was there another agent involved?
There was an agent on the other side who I think missed one of those details. Yeah. So, but just the point is that if an offer expires, it's gone. Once you counter, the other offer's gone. It's just, you got to work with whatever the most recent offer is.
Yeah, the proper way to handle that would have been to have the other agent rewrite a new offer with new expiration dates and new everything else, and then send it over, and that'd have been fine. It'd been very easy to do. I mean, he probably already had it in his computer. He just needed back and you know,
And just change dates
change,
and submit
yeah,
a new
change a few
offer. Yeah.
dates.
Yeah.
But this does bring up another great point, Dan. I appreciate your sharing that story, because even though the market is really fast right now, and it's a vastly overheated seller's market, where quite frankly, if a seller puts a property on the market for, let's say, 675, the person that gets it's probably paying $25,000 over that. They're paying, you know, this almost 700 or $705,000. That's what it's taking to buy houses right now. And when you get that lopsided, either on the seller side or on the buyer side, you know, it becomes real interesting. But the point I want to make is this: you guys are going to have to choose a broker here pretty quick, because you're going to get through the school, you're going to pass your exam, and now you want to go to work. So you're going to have to license with a broker. Make sure that the broker you get, number one, gives you some good training, and number two, is available to you. Because like in the situation Dan was just talking about, you know, you need to talk to your broker and say, hey, what do I do? This is my first deal. I got 10 offers in here, and how do I proceed? Well, you know, and your broker will give you some advice on how to get all that done. So it's critical for a new agent to make sure that you have a broker that you can actually reach out to and ask for help. Now, some brokers hire sales managers that do that. Sometimes you join a team, and there's a team that kind of, you know, everyone helps everybody. But it, you know, please, when we get into these practical discussions, okay, you don't have to know everything about everything before you can do anything. Yeah, I mean, you go out and you jump in the deep end of the pool, and no one's going to let you drown. You've got a broker, you got sales managers, you got all kinds of people you could call for help. There's usually a lender in the deal, a title company in the deal, a home inspector in the deal. There's other people there to help you. You're not going to sink. And uh, that's how you learn experience. Now, don't get in over your head, and make sure you have a broker that'll back you up, because they're responsible for what you're doing as well. Okay, fair enough. And I would suggest that you take your 12-hour mandatory new agents class as quickly as you can after you get licensed. Because in that new agent class, whether it's mine or Dan's or anyone else's out there, that new agent class is a class that's going to go over a lot of the things that new agents need to know. I mean, passing the test is one thing, but knowing how to actually do this stuff is something else. So you're going to need more training. Okay. But you already knew that. Okay. Next question is, okay, a home goes under contract for sale. Home goes under contract. The buyer and the seller negotiate a separate bill of sale for the lawnmower and garden gnomes and a few other things. So according to the real estate purchase contract, now, when you have a question, I think any question on the exam, you ought to read it twice. Let me see, a home goes under contract for sale. So the home was for sale, it goes under contract, which means there was an offer and an offer was accepted. They're in that executory stage. The buyer and seller negotiate a separate deal for the lawn stuff, according to the real estate purchase contract, which is the first contract, right? So, because here's what this devious exam writer is trying to trick you. He threw in this other element that, you know, there's a separate deal for some of the knickknacks around the house. So what does that mean? The lawn furniture and the gnomes will be included in the sale? But no, not according to the Rep C contract. The Rep C contract didn't address all those knickknacks, okay? B, the lawn furniture and gnomes will not be included in the sale. Yeah, that's why they had to enter into a separate agreement. So the answer is B, guys. The sale will not go through unless the lawn furniture and the garden gnomes remain. No, if, you know, I mean, they'll probably be there. You know, there's a separate agreement they entered into. All contracts between the buyer and seller, both bill of sales and the real estate purchase contract must be completed simultaneously. Now, they could go back later and say, you know, we're so excited to be buying your cabin. Or we're just, but we've been looking around and we can't find a snowcat like the one you have to get in here in the wintertime. My son-in-law and daughter just bought a new snowcat to get into their place. And so that's why I'm thinking of this. But, so they enter into a separate agreement to buy the snowcat. I mean, the seller's probably going to sell it anyway. They don't need it anymore. They're selling their cabin. And maybe they're not buying another one. So you might also want to buy all the snow shovels and all the snow blower and all the other snow equipment as well. So they don't have to be done simultaneously. You can go back later and say, we've been thinking about it. Would you sell us this other gear and equipment? And that'd be a separate agreement. Now, be careful of these separate agreements. Make sure that there is no situation in which a bank felt you were trying to deceive them. And to get definitive answers on that exact things when you're doing these deals, once again, talk to your brokers and say, well, I'm feeling uncomfortable because this is a house that included all the furnishings. It was an Airbnb rental, and even the flatware and the sheets and the beds and everything's all included, in the price. Well, that's going to be an issue on the loan. Lenders don't like to lend money on personal property items. They only want to lend on the real estate. But a good broker will show you how to structure that deal so that the lender doesn't feel like they were disadvantaged. And that could be a possible accusation of loan fraud. Okay, next. Okay, R submits an offer to purchase E's house. Later, R decides they don't want to buy the house for the offered amount. They must communicate withdrawal of the offer before. Okay, so they presented an offer, but there's nothing in that stem of that question that says whether it was accepted or not. So we have to assume that it hasn't been accepted. And the buyer decides, I've changed my mind, I don't want it. So they have to withdraw it prior to the offer being what? Accepted and communicated back to the agent or to the other parties. So we're looking at E. Okay, because R submitted the offer. And what would happen is once it's signed, E's going to pick up the phone and call R and say, hey, congratulations, we got a deal. Well, now the buyer or the buyer's agent knows that deal's been accepted. So a little more difficult to get out of now. Not impossible, because they have lots of contingencies in the contract, but to just withdraw an offer unilaterally, you can do that anytime and up to the time it's been accepted and acceptance has been communicated to either the other party or the other party's agent. Next question, please. What does the term time is of the essence mean? It means that the dates in the contract are firm and enforceable. So all the deadlines and the dates in the contract, it's D, answer is D, are enforceable. It does not mean the contract is for an unlimited amount of time. Time is of the essence just means that the dates we put in here are the date. The timeline of the contract is unspecific. How can it be unspecific if you had time is of the essence dates in the contract? The deadline of the contract will be determined at a future date. No, time is the essence clause means that the dates that we agreed to are what we agreed to. And if you don't cancel the agreement because you don't get the loan, or you didn't get the appraisal, or you don't cancel the agreement because you were unhappy with the disclosures, or you're unhappy with the condition, all that stuff had to be done prior to the contract being accepted. And then once it's accepted, okay, then those dates are what? Those dates in the contract are enforceable. Okay? After a buyer has signed a purchase contract with no restrictions, with no restrictions, they can transfer their interest in the property by, what interest do they have in a property if the seller's agreed to sell it to them? We covered it a little earlier. You remember what that term was? It's called equitable title. Okay, equitable title. Well, okay, but if there's no restrictions in the Rep C contract, they could assign that to someone else, another buyer. So they could assign it and transferring your equitable title interest. But in our current Rep C contract, one we're using, approved by the Attorney General and the Real Estate Commission, that one has a restriction against assignment unless it's being assigned to an entity that's owned by the current buyer that's under contract. Okay. They can't transfer it in escrow. They can't transfer it with an agency agreement. That's a listing contract, and they can't exercise a financing contingency. I guess they could, but that's not transferring your interest. That's canceling the deal. Okay. Okay. Questions that anybody has? I think it's real important, and you can see by tonight's little exercise of going through these questions that you really have to learn the vocabulary of real estate. And there's a lot of different, you'll get it in studying the material, you'll get it in doing practice exams like the one we just did. We have these Tuesday reviews every other Tuesday, which you can come to and ask all kinds of questions. You can also call in and have an instructor call you back with some answers too. We have all these things available to you. But there's also another thing you can have, and you can have it for free. If you go to rickroller.com, you'll come to a website that I put together, and on there you can get a vocabulary helper type program. It's a Quizlet program. And if you decide to get that, you'll have to download it. And when you download it, there's a password, and the password is limitless agent. But all that's on my website. But you're welcome to have that for free if you'd like to have it. Also, I have a YouTube page. Rick at rickroller.com. Thanks, Dan. Also, I have a web page or a YouTube page. And my YouTube page is Rick Roller Real Estate. So you go to YouTube, and then you hit the little magnifying glass search part, and then you put in Rick Roller Real Estate, and you'll find it there. And there's some little reviews that I've done as well. Okay, so all this is free, and Dan and I are serious about one thing. We want you to be comfortable when you walk in an exam, and you can be if you just apply yourself. Jackie, you just started just a little bit ago, and Larry, I don't know how long some of you, Larry or Adrian, I don't know how long you've been with us, but I would admonish you to get in, dedicate the time, and get out as quickly as you can. Please don't stretch this out over a year or so. You'll start to forget things, and then you'll have to relearn and go back again. But if you ever need any help, you're welcome to call the school. You're welcome to call me. I have a cell phone. It's 801-556-8000. That's 801-556-8000. And you call that number, I answer the phone. If you're stuck on something, and I don't care what time it is, it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever. I don't want you to agonize over that for hours, because you could call me and we could spend a quality 3 minutes on the phone, and then you're going to understand it. And it's important. People help me. I want to help people. This is a particular school that is extremely service oriented. You'll find that Dan keeps this material razor sharp and updated. You're in the right place, and you're going to have a great opportunity doing things and getting through the exam, and you're going to have a great career. It's what's going to happen in the future is going to amaze you. There's going to be a tremendous opportunity. People are flocking to Utah like crazy. We've got all that property out where the old prison is. It's going to be redeveloped. That Silicon Slope property is going to be hot. We've got huge tech companies coming to town. I mean, Amazon's hiring people like crazy for their distribution centers they're building here in our state. Guys, you're getting in at the right time. Will the market change? I hope so. I hope it calms down a little bit. But hot market, colder market, seller's market, buyer's market, it's always a realtor's market. You just have to change how you work a little bit. So thanks for being with us tonight. I look forward to meeting you and seeing you in your career out there. And I wish you well. And remember, bless lives, make money.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Rick, for all you do. We really appreciate you. We'll do another one of these in about 2 weeks. Thanks. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Thanks, Dan.
Mhm.